Do you want to become a talk show host? Do you have a great idea? Passionate World Talk Radio is currently looking for podcast hosts for our Internet Talk radio station. Please email us at pwtrnetworkllc@gmail.com with your name, email address, cell phone number, and podcast topic. In return, you will receive a 3-minute intro on air to a live audience about your podcast. Remember, just email us your name, email address, and your podcast topic, and in return, you will receive a free 3-minute intro on the air. How cool is that? Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain.
Well, hello and welcome to the Wine and Cheese program. My name is Sheila Wilson. I'm a registered nurse, president of Stop Healthcare Violence, and a host on the Passionate World Talk Radio. Before I introduce my guest for this, I need to say our disclaimer. The opinions of the guest may not represent the views of the host or the station. Today I have Beckett Augat. She's a registered nurse that has been on the strike line for 8 weeks through the rain, the snow, the hail, the wind. And Beckett, how about what is happening? Is everybody happy with negotiations that went on?
I think that would be a resounding no from the bargaining unit, and even the nurses now that have crossed. So we did have, finally, after 8 weeks of striking, we had spoken to the mediator, and the hospital had asked us if there were any areas of flexibility. We had presented, the last time we were at the negotiation table, the nurses had presented a proposal on staffing, and they said not acceptable. They didn't even want to talk about it. They refused to talk about it. Said, well, it seems that you guys just want to go on strike, and refused to negotiate. They said our final package stands, and this is what it is. And we went on strike on March 8th. So now, they've spent how many millions? It was, from what we understood, for the first 2 weeks of scab replacement nurses, it was $5.4 million. On top of $250,000, give or take, every week for Worcester PD detail. And that's not including the additional security team that they had hired to sit in the parking lot and everywhere else.
Is security still there?
The security left a couple weeks ago. They've cut back on the Worcester PD detail. And we've actually had replacement nurses that are inside come up to us in the parking lot and say, we can understand why you're out here. We're not renewing our contract.
Wow.
It's unsafe. It's completely unacceptable in there. So, it's been an eye-opener, but they finally came back to the table. They asked us if there was any areas of flexibility, and we provided them areas of flexibility, but not a proposal. That went through the mediator. The mediator then presented that to them. And we said, we can meet you anytime, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever time you want. And usually if you're serious about negotiations, our typical before was 12 to 4, 12 to 5, 1 to 5. They chose 3 o'clock on Monday, which is already kind of a red flag.
Right, that's a very odd hour.
Yes, it's already a red flag when they choose 3 o'clock on a Monday. So they chose 3 o'clock on a Monday, and they came back with a proposal that was insulting, to say the least. So they had already had a proposal on the table that addressed, they keep trying to say, well, the money. It's not about the money. If you read every single one of our signs, our picket signs, it's about safe patient staffing.
Right.
It's not safe for me to have 1 to 5. And just before we left, our director was saying, well, you can take 6. And my coworker, who's also a ER rep with me, was forced to take 7 one day. We've had nurses have 12 or 14 in the back at night because there's not enough staff. We've had nurses that are in the behavioral health unit, which is our acute care psychiatric area, have 8 patients by themselves at night. And none of that is safe. None of that is safe. National Nurses Union recommends a 4-to-1 in the ER. They recommended 3-to-1. The Emergency Nurses Association recommended a 4-to-1. And it was funny because I just recently took a trip and I sat next to a nurse from Alabama who works in the ER, and their ratio is 3-to-1 in the ER. I have a friend who was an ER nurse in Arkansas 5 years ago, and her ratio was 3-to-1. And they said very rarely do we get 4-to-1, and it's a really bad night if we have 4-to-1. And here we are taking twice the amount that southern states are taking in their emergency room. So it's just mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. However, so they came back, and their previous, we'll discuss their money portion, which was even more insulting, but their 2 creative solutions that they came up with was to implement an audit committee that would meet quarterly to address safe staffing and whether or not they were maintaining staffing guidelines. Because a lot of the times what they would do was flex the nurse home, board patients in the ER, and then slam the next shift at night where they could go up in numbers, and then the day shift would just have to deal with it and be over numbers. So they never really stayed or committed to our contract guidelines that were there before, never mind any new ones. So they don't even want to discuss new staffing guidelines. So this audit committee will meet quarterly. It will consist of 3 members from their side, 3 members from our side, and we would select a neutral audit company, which, then the hospital's paying for, so really how neutral is it?
Right.
And if they're found to be in violation of the staffing guidelines for 2 quarters, then we would be allowed to go directly to arbitration. Because one of our proposals was we want to be able to hold them accountable when they're not sticking to the staffing guidelines. The amusing portion of this is that 600 unsafe staffing reports, 700 unsafe staffing reports over the last year. We have monthly labor management meetings where it is constantly brought up. And this was their 2 creative solutions to our staffing problem was a committee. With which they also wanted to be able to include in the numbers all nursing positions posted. So we're going to use ghost nurses in these numbers.
Now, is this person well known? Is he stable?
So their lawyer is very well known, but they added a couple other players into the game this time because we've actually gone through a significant amount of management there since we started negotiations in 2019. We lost our head of labor relations that was at St. Vincent Hospital. We've lost a director of nurses. We've lost assistant director of nurses. Now, all of these people were in the negotiations, and then we also lost the head of human resources during this last round. So we went from all of these heads to now there's about 3 managers that sit on it and directors, 3 directors actually of their departments. And the new director of nurses, and now they just added the CNO for tenant, for the entire tenant, which was Teresa Horn, and they also added the head of labor relations for the entire tenant, which is Eric Richard, I believe. I'd have to look up his name. I wrote it down. So very interesting that we've gone through this much management. That says something in and of itself right there.
Well, it certainly does. And did you know any of them well enough to say, why are you leaving?
I have an idea of why some have left. The CNO, in May last year, we took a vote of no confidence in the current sitting CEO, Carolyn Jackson, and in the CNO. And I believe they used the CNO as a scapegoat, and she retired. But Carolyn Jackson still is in there, spewing her lies, saying that we're irresponsible, and she loves to throw around that she is very disappointed in us. But she also throws out blatant lies, like that they tried to meet with us 3 times and we declined. Well, in order to meet with us, you have to go through the federal mediator, which they requested. That the hospital requested that the federal mediator become involved. So they're well aware that their lawyer has to contact the federal mediator to set up these sessions. And it's set up on a federal site on Central Ring, which is not something that we control or the hospital controls. So she's actually said in the news that they've attempted to meet with us 3 times in the last couple of weeks, and we have adamantly refused. Well, the mediator was not aware of this because she would let us know as soon as they're ready. So there's certain things like that. She's absolutely putting out untruths in the media to make us, the nurses, look bad. And what she doesn't understand is that when she keeps saying the MNA is doing this, the MNA is doing that, it's not the MNA, it's your nurses that are on strike. And we are the MNA. That is our union. We are the Massachusetts Nurses Association. So when you keep saying the union, you're saying your nurses because we're the nurses on strike. It's not the MNA that's on strike. It's the nurses of St. Vincent Hospital are on strike. And we are represented by the Massachusetts Nurses Association. That is our union. So not only did they do that, they created a committee. And anytime a committee is suggested, it's pretty much it's a pretty curtain to hide the crap behind it. They also had at one point suggested for money that we get a 1% retro pay to July 1st of 2020. They've taken that away. They took that off the thing, and they want retro pay only to January 1st of 2021. So in the year of the nurse and in the year of a pandemic where we served despite knowing what would happen, and we did our jobs, and we did our jobs well, and we had to do things and learn things, and, you know, it was on the fly. COVID was a whole new ballgame. Things that we would normally see and how we would treat them, we couldn't do that anymore. We had to adapt a whole new way. Floors were doing new drips because the ICU was too overloaded. You know, all of this stuff, and their way of thanking us is to say, you don't get any retro pay, you don't get a raise for 2020. They had also at one point had on the board that they wanted to do a 2% bonus for all hours paid during 2020, and that bonus would be applied only to full-time and part-time staff. They left out per diems. And the reason why they did this is because during COVID, Tenet Hospital furloughed staff. They didn't furlough per diems. They furloughed regular staff. And so they saved money on benefits. They saved money on pay. And what they did was they had per diems picking up extra shifts. And they did. The per diems stepped up. So they should have been getting that bonus. And it was very insulting to the per diems and to the nurses in general that they wouldn't be included in that bonus. And now to add to that is that So now to add to that, we are, they took that off the board. They took that off of their proposal. They crossed it out. So not only is there no bonus for 2020, there's no raise for 2020, and money was never the thing for us, but to suggest a committee and not discuss staffing, which is why we're out here, and not to discuss what safe patient staffing looks like, but instead to suggest a committee and then take away any bonuses or retro pay or even a pay raise of 1%, it was insulting.
What I don't understand is anytime I had talked to you or anybody from St. Vincent's, everybody, even all over Facebook, everything else is that it's short staffing. We need more help. I don't remember seeing anything about we need a raise. I mean, it would be nice to get a raise, but that wasn't even on your agenda.
It really wasn't. I mean, we do, obviously, anytime you go to, negotiations, you do ask for a raise, a yearly raise,
right.
But it wasn't the prime focus. It never was. So they keep trying to dangle the carrot of money in front of us, and we kept saying it's about staffing, and now they took the money away and won't talk about staffing either. So they gave a double whammy.
If for some odd reason the nurses decide we're going to go back and you're going to get hit with the same amount, you'll be getting, instead of 1 to 5, 1 to 6 patients, you're going to be getting 1 to 8 patients in the ER. And unless you work the ER, which I had the opportunity to work that for, I think, 12 years or 14 years, you can't handle that as a nurse. You're one person. And I don't know how many doctors you had, but we had one doctor from 7A to 11A. Then somebody else would come in. So there's 2 doctors until 11 p.m. And then from 11 p.m., there's 1 doctor until 7 a.m. Now, how does 1 doctor and probably 3 nurses running around doing all of the patients? It's a setup for disaster.
And you know what? None of those directors, well, first of all, our CEO doesn't even have any degree or education in healthcare. She is a chemical engineer and got this job suggested to her by one of her Harvard alumni friends where she got her MBA from. Oh. She's actually referred to patients as widgets, that she doesn't see a big difference in engineering in this, that, it's widgets.
During the time of the interviews, somebody brought that up, to insult the patient as a widget.
Yeah.
I understand what she might have been talking about with her brain as the MBA and all that stuff, but that's a terrible thing to...
It's absolutely horrible. And we've tried to explain, this is not a factory line. This is not a factory line where A plus B equals C. This is medicine. Medicine, the same thing does not work for every person. I always say we call it the practice of medicine because it's a practice. We are practicing every time we apply. Yes, there's standard guidelines, but one medication might not work for one patient. You could give them Zofran, which is an antiemetic, and they could still be vomiting, and you could give them another dose, and they could still be vomiting, and then you have to move on to a different medicine.
Right.
And you have to know these things, and you have to recognize it, and you have to have time at the bedside to acknowledge this, to see it, to work with the patients to give them the best possible care. And then if Raglan doesn't work, you move on to composite. But it's a practice. Some people, that first dose of Zofran, and it's like a miracle for them. They stop vomiting, they feel better, you give them a little fluids, they're able to go about life. Not everybody reacts the same.
The thing with this, Beckett, is that a nurse has to be watching them. and documenting that, yes, the first dose of Zofran helped, but then the other patient, the first dose of Zofran didn't help. Now, if you have 5, 6 other patients, you might not get back to that second patient that the Zofran didn't help for a half an hour, 45 minutes. Yeah. And then, it's about the patients. And I really think that this is what you girls are fighting for, or not just the girls, the nurses. And
it's absolutely what we're fighting for. It's never been about us. This is for years. It's funny because we Sheila and yourself and myself have been talking because of safety and not getting no metal detector, being in the middle of gang zones, and their reasoning for not wanting to put a metal detector in is because we're a community hospital.
That's ridiculous.
We are.
That's
we are a community hospital. We are a community hospital, and this is our community, and we live and work here. And it's our family that's coming in here. It's our neighbors. It's our friends that are coming into this hospital and seeking care, and we want to make sure that they have the care they should. And even for the people that are perfect strangers to us, as nurses, you know what it's like. It's the heart of nursing is that you treat somebody like you would your family member.
That's right. One that you liked.
Yes, one that you liked. A family member you liked. Exactly, Sheila. If I have an elderly gentleman, I'm going to make sure that he gets treated just as well as if my grandfather was in that bed or my father. And if you're preventing me from doing my job because you're not giving us enough staff and you have me covering too many patients that are too ill, because acuity doesn't even come into it, and they're not even following the guidelines or our contract of if there's an ICU patient. In Massachusetts, we have an ICU law.
Oh, I didn't know the ICU law.
Yep, so the ICU law in Massachusetts is a nurse in the ICU can take one ICU patient, and if that nurse deems that patient stable enough, she can take a second one. Or he, obviously, she or he. In our contract, we have it written that an ICU patient will receive that same standard of care regardless of where they are in the hospital. Meaning, if the ICU patient is in the PACU, it'll be a 1-to-1.
How about in the ER?
Well, it should be, but they never do it.
So what, if that doesn't happen, is there any recourse?
Filing at our unsafe staffing, and now this audit committee that they suggested that they can do that task for 6 months before we have any say.
Wow.
So
it sounds like the patients better pay attention when they come in.
Which is difficult. In the year of COVID, they stopped visitors from coming in.
That's
so
right.
If that patient was too sick to advocate for themselves, there was no family member there to advocate for them. So it fell on the nurses.
Right. And then it's the telephone calls. That's what you girls were, you nurses were having, trying to
so they
let
would
the
have
family know what's going on.
They would have resource with full assignments on the floor. Nurses with 5-to-1 patient ratios on the floor with new drips being added. And secretaries, they weren't hiring secretary positions for the hospital. They actually even furloughed some. And they would say to resource, well, carry around the phone and answer the phone.
Right.
So they kept taking away our ancillary staff that is necessary to make a floor run smoothly and to be able to put patients first.
Right. During your negotiations, do you ever ask why that they don't understand that you are unable to safely take care of more than the patients that you're asking for?
They don't. Honestly, the group that sits in front of us now, I don't know about the two new players that came into it, Eric and Teresa, but the directors, the CNO, they don't say anything at the table. The director of nurses and the CNO, the only person that usually speaks for them is their attorney. And Carolyn Jackson, who talks about, what's going on at the table, has never, ever actually been at the negotiation table.
Wow.
And it's on the computer. It's not like she actually has to show up someplace and be there and walk out and walk in. It's on a computer. She just has to log in. And she's chosen not to ever participate. She actually has chosen not to ever meet any of us in the union except for our co-chairs, even though we offered to meet her. Most CEOs come in and want to meet the union committee, and she's made no attempt to and actually declined and only wanted to meet with our co-chairs.
Wow. So what's the next move? Is there a next move?
We presented it to our bargaining unit, and it was a very resounding no from them. I don't think that they realized, I'm not sure if they realized how insulting the proposal was. I mean, they have to. They're educated individuals. They can't look at this and think that that was actually a great proposal. And that our nurses, and that the nurses would be happy with it.
What they might be looking at is the nurses don't know squat about negotiation. They're nurses, Let's try and do this. Oh, yes, I know that. But do they?
And I think what they're counting on is they delayed until the last possible moment sending in unemployment information. They waited to the deadline. They're waiting to the deadline for COBRA. So I think they're trying to wait us out and just make us uncomfortable, and it's really sad that a healthcare company is holding out on healthcare coverage for nurses on strike for patient safety issues. It's very sad. It's very sad that they would delay the unemployment. This is their nurses, and this is how, you want to see what happened behind closed doors in the hospital and how you treated us for the past years, but now the public gets to see it. So they're waiting us out. I think they're trying to make us uncomfortable and see if we cave. And with this last proposal, if they did nothing else, is that they set the resolve of this bargaining unit to not go back in there until the situation is addressed. The line yesterday and the line today has been full. The nurses are angry. They are frustrated. They are disappointed. Some have talked about going to another job because they do not want to go back there when they feel so underappreciated for all of their hard work and all of their years of service. And you have to understand that a lot of the nurses here, so they had a strike in 2000 here, and it lasted 49 days. We are now beyond that. Some of these nurses have done this twice.
Do you think that they had negotiations, was it the 50th day, one day after the last strike?
Well, Carolyn Jackson mentioned that, and she's mentioned in the news that she thinks that that's why we're staying out. We're going to stay out till we stay out longer than the first strike. There's a saying in the union, in a lot of unions, one day longer, one day stronger, that we will stick it out until we outweight them. Because the issues at hand right now are so important that we will be out one day longer, one day stronger, and we'll do it. We need our patients and our licenses and our livelihood to be safe. And they don't seem to understand this at that point.
Well, I don't know what they think of nurses all in general, but they certainly have done a number for you nurses out there.
this group seems to think that we're handmaidens without two wits about us. And the funniest portion,
you're not smart enough.
The funniest portion of this whole thing is that I have met nurses that have been in this building. I've been in there 13 years, that I have not met in my 13 years of working there. And I've created friendships with these nurses that it's altered and changed my life. And I can't imagine my life now without these wonderful, amazing women and men in my life.
Well, this is it. You know, now you're out there walking amongst a group of professionals.
And we're building each other up.
All over the place.
And we're building each other up and making each other stronger and supporting each other in every way we possibly can. You know, we have other nurses' kids, other nurses' older children watching some of the younger kids so the mothers can go on the line later on. It's just, it's just been absolutely amazing. But also to see all of these different women's skills and men's skills from, we have a nurse who owns a restaurant, and I didn't know that. And it's the next town over from me. And she makes the most amazing strawberry muffins. Oh, yeah, with fresh strawberries. She always makes sure she puts one aside. But, these are the friendships that I've developed that I will carry these friendships even if I didn't end up at St. B's, which I can't imagine. This is the place that, our co-chair, she went to nursing school here. Her first job and only job has been with St. Vincent's. And she figured she would retire from there. And, I can't tell you how many nurses here have 20, 30, even 40 years here.
Yes.
It's a family. It's not, and you know what? We have watched, in my 13 years, I have watched more CEOs come and go. The nurses stay. I've seen more doctors come and go. The nurses stay. There is a core group of nurses that always stay because it's family.
And it's those core nurses that teach the ones that come on. And they help them through all of their learning so that they can become good nurses.
I'm very proud to be a St. Vincent nurse. I am not proud to say I'm a tenant employee.
Right, and that's very sad. That's sad to hear. That really is. Wow.
So,
is there anything else? Is there anything that we can do, the public, to help the St. Vincent nurses? I know that you do some fundraising, or I guess maybe that's not the word, but donations.
Yep, we do have a strike fund account.
I'm sorry?
We do have a strike fund that nurses can apply to who are having a hard time or need to meet a bill. So we do have that strike fund. We also are asking, write letters to the editor, write letters to Carolyn Jackson, write letters to the shareholders or the board of directors for Tenet Hospital. Let them know how disappointed you are that they would put profits over patients. Take a look at what the company has done. It's actually pretty eye-opening to see all the problems that Tenet has had because of the dirty little things that they do and have done, that they've gotten fined for. But write letters. Call your representatives. If you are in Massachusetts and you are in this area, call your representatives. Call, Charlie Baker, and call, we've had Senator McGovern in here, and he's been phenomenal. So has Senator Markey and Senator Warren. They've all come down to the line and supported us. So we have huge public and political support. Tonight we just had the laborers unions in here, the electricians, the roofers, the carpenters. They were all here to present a letter to Carolyn Jackson telling them that 700,000. They will encourage their 700,000 to not come to this hospital and not bring their family members here to this instance until they come back and put patients first. And they presented that letter, and they have been on the strike line with us every Wednesday. You'll see a bunch of yellow and orange safety shirts out there, and these women and men in the builders have supported us. We've had other nursing unions come. We've had massive donations from other unions. It's, even just my church has helped to get food boxes here. It's been so humbling for us because we're so used to taking care of everybody, and it's been very hard to kind of change that mentality. But it's been very humbling to see the community surround us and support us and tell us how much they care about us. So even though tenants may think, and we're claiming that we were heroes and now pretty much they're treating us like zeros, the community's still behind us and they're still showing us that they care and that we're supported and that they believe in us.
Well,
and it's been very humbling. Very humbling.
The community certainly is so supportive, it sounds like, and it's so important to you. And if Tenet opens their eyes, and if they, if more people come and say, we're not coming to your hospital, well, that's on them. And
it's
all you're asking for is more nurses to take care of the patients.
To take better care of the patients.
Right.
We want our patients first. We want our patients to be able to get the care that they deserve. And I honestly don't think that's too much to ask.
No, but it sounds like the people like that, Carolyn, don't understand. But if it was her and she had something going on, boy, she'd want the nurse there every second.
Well, and you know how that works, right, Sheila? I mean, you've had that call from the higher up or from your director saying,
oh, yeah. Yep.
The DON just called, and she's bringing so-and-so in, and you need to treat them like a VIP. I mean, how often do we get those calls? So every patient should be treated like a VIP.
That's absolutely right.
It shouldn't be just because you make more money than anybody else at the lower levels that you get treated like a VIP. Every patient should be able to be treated like a VIP. And, that's the heart of nursing is that we take care of everybody. We, there is no discrimination. We don't care ethnicity, gender orientation, gender preference. None of that plays into it. Whether you're an addict or an alcoholic, none of that plays into it. No. We still will take care of you.
There's a human in front of us, and we're taking care of them.
And that's exactly it. And, just the fact that they pull that VIP card has always been a little bit of a thorn in my side because, everybody's a VIP. I don't care where you come from, what you make. If you're there and you're my patient, I'm going to try to make sure you're comfortable, that you're cared for, and that, you have that warm blanket. Sometimes that just makes the biggest difference.
It does.
But having that time to be able to do it and not have my house, the housekeeping staff, the environmental staff, have to step in and help with that because I've got 6 patients. Yeah. It breaks. I absolutely love our environmental staff and our secretaries and our techs, but it hurts when they have to step in to give a warm blanket because I literally don't have time to. Right.
And it's the ancillary staff that notices somebody that is, shaking because of the chill or they're sweating because of the heat or the fever, or there's different eyes on these patients. And if you don't have them, you miss it.
Absolutely.
So anything else, Beckett, you want to say right now before we close?
I appreciate your support. I appreciate being able to put our story out there. If people are looking to donate, they can go to St. V's Strike Fund, and it's under business for Venmo. There's also, PayPal site, which is the www.massnurses.org/St. Vincent PayPal. And the money that's being raised there is going directly to the nurses to help support them during this time. We've gone 8 weeks without being by the bedside. And some of us have taken per diem jobs, and others are just doing the best they can, and they're out here picketing every day. I feel like I actually put in more hours now than I did when I was working, and I'm actually sure of it because I kept track. And it's exhausting, wow. But the fight is worth it. The fight with Tenet to make them aware that our patients should come before profit. And this company has made millions and billions off of everything. They showed profits during the pandemic. They had us reusing PPE. So, they were saying there wasn't any issues. There were some significant issues. So anything anybody can do to support, even if you're driving by the hospital, honk your horn and wave and smile. That makes our day.
It does, doesn't it?
It does. It just shows support in even the smallest thing. So
well, I will thank you for coming on, Beckett. This is really important information to let the public know what is happening, and it's not, the nurses are asking for a big, big raise. The nurses are doing it for them, the patients, the community. They want to give good care, and that's all they're really asking for. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Sheila.
Well, we'll have to have another update, but I will thank everybody that has been listening to us and will listen to us. And a thank you goes out to Lillian Caldwell, CEO of Passionate World Talk Radio, and to Jeannie White, station manager. And Jeannie White is the one that writes all the blogs and posts our shows. Thank you so much.
Do you want to become a talk show host? Do you have a great idea? Passionate World Talk Radio is currently looking for podcast hosts for our Internet Talk Radio station. Please email us at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com with your name, email address, cell phone number, and podcast topic. In return, you will receive a 3-minute intro on air to a live audience about your podcast. Remember, just email us your name, email address, and your podcast topic, and in return, you will receive a free 3-minute intro on the air. How cool is that? Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Alexa, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the Internet.